It's time for Recipe of the Day. Boneless, skinless chicken breasts are such a go-to for dinner in my house, and as little meal prep as I do, they are one of the things that I will do on a Sunday like today, prep up a whole bunch of chicken breasts. And since I do make them a lot, I want them to be extra delicious, and so I brine them, which is what I'm telling you about today. First, I'm going to say that if you have tried brining chicken breast before, or if you decided that you don't want to because it seems like a pain, please continue listening because this technique really does make a difference and is nowhere near the pain that you might think it is and really does have amazing effects. The second thing I'm going to say is that this is a really long episode, so I'm going to give you the too long didn't read version right now at the beginning, and then if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, you don't have to. You can just trust that I did all these experiments and I'm going to tell you about them, but this is what you want to do. To brine 4 chicken breasts that are about 6 to 8 ounces each, you want to mix together 4 cups of cold tap water with 4.5 tablespoons of Morton's kosher salt or 6 tablespoons of Diamond Crystal kosher salt. The crystals on that one are bigger, so you need more of it, or 3 tablespoons of table salt. So 4 cups of water and then your amount of salt that you need. You mix that together until the salt is dissolved. You're going to add in a scoop, about a tablespoon of garlic powder. Stir that in after the salt was dissolved. Then add your chicken breasts to it, and you're going to leave them on the counter for 30 to 45 minutes. Then you're going to take them out of the water. Don't rinse them, just pat them dry, and then you're going to cook them. That's the short version. Now I'm going to tell you the long version. Okay, so what is brining? Brining is basically soaking meat or poultry in a salt water solution before cooking it. Now, it's actually debated a little bit in the culinary literature about what's actually happening here. You see words like osmosis and diffusion being used, and then there's some debate. So I'm not going to really try to figure that out. What I'm going to say is that we know that when you brine poultry or brine meat, 3 basic things end up happening. First of all, salt water gets soaked up into meat more easily than plain water. So when you put meat into salt water, it's soaking up more moisture, which means that the meat is going to seem moister once it's cooked. The second thing that the brine does is it actually changes the texture of the meat. It's a kind of denaturing. It's very similar to the process they use when making lunch meat. So you know how chicken breast lunch meat or turkey breast lunch meat is kind of juicier than regular chicken or turkey? It's because of this denaturing, this texture change. And so we're doing a small amount of that when we brine our poultry. Now, finally, the third thing that happens is, of course, we're using salted water. So it's water with salt dissolved into it. And that's what's getting drawn into the meat. What does that mean? It means you're actually salting and seasoning the inside of the meat, not just the outside. And so every single bite, every part of every single bite has some nice flavor to it. So those are the 3 things that brining does to chicken breasts. In the end, you get more well-seasoned meat that is juicier and has that more tender texture. Okay, so that is what we're trying to do. Now, how do we do it? First, let me tell you what goes into a brine. I have a standard brine recipe that's perfect for 4 to 6 chicken breasts that are about 6 ounces each, and it starts with 4 cups of cold water. I'm going to tell you why cold in a little while. And then the amount of salt that you use depends on the kind of salt that you have. And this is very, very important. I cannot overstate this enough. Different kinds of salt have different kinds of crystals, different sized crystals. And so when you measure them, they're not equivalent to each other. They have different amounts of saltiness because a crystal that's bigger takes up more room and has kind of less saltiness per that space then. Okay, so when I say what kind of salt to use, you have to make sure that you're using the right kind of salt. But I've given you amounts for different kinds, so you probably have at least one of those kinds. My preference is to use Morton's kosher salt. I've just found that I end up liking the flavor better. I don't really even sure how to explain that, but when I've used table salt in the past, I have sometimes ended up with it tasting a little bit saltier, so I don't go that way. Even though I have tested this and it does work, my favorite is the Morton's kosher salt. So if you're using Morton's to 4 cups of cold water, you're doing 4.5 tablespoons of the Morton's kosher. If you're using table salt with the 4 cups of water, you're going to use 3 tablespoons of table salt. And then if you have the other main kind of kosher salt, which is the Diamond Crystal brand, it has a larger crystal size, so you need 6 tablespoons of that one. So 4.5 of Morton's, 3 of table salt, or 6 of the Diamond Crystal kosher salt. Now you're mixing that together with the water, and you're gonna just have to stir it for a while. It takes a little bit for it to dissolve, but it will dissolve. It kind of gets less cloudy, and then you stop seeing the salt crystals at the bottom of your bowl. I like to use a glass measuring cup for that, like a big one, and then I can really see all the way down into it. Now, some people like to add other ingredients to their brine to add extra flavor, but we're going to be talking about the timing for brining in a minute, and you're going to hear that you can just do this for as short a time as 15 minutes. When you do it for 15 minutes, I do not find that any of the other flavors really penetrate in there. But if you're doing it for more than 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, which is really my preference, then you can add some extra stuff. My favorite is to just add a tablespoon of garlic powder or garlic granules in there and mix it all in after you've added the salt to the water and mix that well. You want to make sure that the salt is well dissolved, and you know it's dissolved because once you add in the garlic, it makes it cloudier and then you can't tell if the salt is dissolved. So dissolve the salt in the water, then a scoop of that garlic powder, and I find that it really, really flavors the chicken really well if the chicken's in there for long enough. Okay, the next question, warm water or cold water? So a lot of people use warm water because it dissolves the salt more easily. And then also I have found online some people saying that using the warm water not only helps dissolve the salt, but makes the brining process work better. And I've also read that people say that it brings the chicken up to room temperature faster, which makes it cook more evenly in the oven. So I really wanted to test this. And what I found is it does help the salt dissolve more, but it doesn't do the other things. The side-by-side test of using a warm brine versus a cold brine, the cold was better. It was juicier. Now, I am not using any kind of real food science here, but I am wondering if that warm or hot tap water is really what they're using. If that actually is ever so slightly cooking the outside of the chicken, like just in the slightest way, which is making it harder for that salt water to penetrate inside. That's my best guess about what's going on there. So I am saying cold water is what you want to use. There is a way that you could kind of get the benefits of both, but I find it kind of a pain. But I will tell you, you can use the warm tap water, do like 2 cups of the warm tap water, hot tap water, dissolve your salt into it, and then add ice cubes enough to make up the 4 cups. And then you'll have the cold water. But I just find that to be kind of annoying. You're adding ice, you're stirring, you're adding ice, you're stirring. And so it's just easier to just go with the 4 cups of cold and then add your salt and stir, stir, stir until it's dissolved. And then you can add your chicken to that. Now we are at what I think of as the most important part of this, and this is the timing. Now, for years, I've been brining chicken breasts, and I've been putting them in the brine for about 3 hours. And so I didn't always want to do it. It's kind of a pain. I'd forget. I didn't get around to it. And then it was really coming across these recipes for chicken breasts online that said you could do it for as short as 15 minutes, where I was like, no, that's not possible. It takes longer than that. But you know me, I had to actually test it and find out for sure. And so I did a side-by-side comparison of 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours, all in the same brine, same size chicken breast, and then cooked in exactly the same way. Now, what I have found is those 15-minute recommendations online are like sort of right, but not really. What it really did was it added some nice saltiness right into the chicken, which is really good. You know, having the chicken salted all the way through, as I said, is really a huge difference, but there was no texture change and no change in juiciness. It was hard to tell. Like, it's really hard to tell. You're having a plain unbrined chicken breast next to one that was in a 15-minute brine. Are they different? Well, one tastes better. It must have had an effect. But when you compare it to one that's been in the brine for 30 minutes, it's completely different. The one that's been in there for 30 minutes combined to 15 minutes actually has a more tender, juicy texture. Just a little bit, but it is there. And so I really think the 30 minutes is worth it. Now, really, the best is a full hour. It really kind of penetrates. It's juicy. It's tender. There is a definite texture change, not all the way to like lunch meat chicken breast, but definite tender change. So if I can do an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, that is my favorite. And the bonus of that is, of course, that scoop of garlic powder is going to make the difference at that time too. So you get that nice garlicky flavor all the way through. Beyond that, at the 2-hour point, it did seem a little overly salty. If it was being put into a recipe, like into a pasta or into anything else, it might be fine. But if you're just eating that chicken breast fast on its own. 2 hours is going to be overkill. 4 hours was too salty. Really, I didn't like it at all, the full 4 hours. And then 8 hours, I couldn't even really eat. It's just, it's almost spongy. It's way too salty. It's not good. So I really think the sweet spot is somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour in cold water, and you've got it. But, I'll also say, since 15 minutes did have an effect, what I have been doing is I've been getting out my chicken breasts and making the brine as the first step of like right before I start getting anything else out to do any kind of dinner making. Get home, start doing that, leave it off to the side. And then if it is only 15 minutes till I'm ready to cook the chicken, it's going to be more flavorful. If it gets in there for longer, if it ends up being 30, 45 minutes before I get around to it, it's great. I will say, in terms of refrigeration, your chicken is perfectly safe. Cold chicken in a cold water brine on the counter is fine for 30 minutes. It's fine for 45 minutes. I think it's even fine for an hour. I would double check your own sources, USDA and that, about that, because I don't want anybody to get sick. But 1 hour, if I started with cold water and cold chicken, I am perfectly comfortable with that. You'll have to make your own decision. Anything over 1 hour, if I know I'm not going to be getting to this in longer than an hour, it should go in the fridge right from the beginning. So you're just going to mix together your brine, you're going to add your chicken, and then put the whole thing into the fridge. Now, I'm going to say I use for this, like I said, a measuring bowl. I think it's the Pampered Chef big, like kind of shaped like a football, half a football kind of measuring bowl. That one, I mix it right in there. The measurement for the 4 cups is there. And then I can add my chicken breast right to it if I'm doing 3 or 4. And then that is what goes in the fridge or sits on the counter. That's my favorite thing to use for that. Any kind of big, like 8-cup measuring cup is great. Or you can do a bowl, or you can do a zip top bag. I would probably blend the water and salt together in a bowl just because it's a little bit easier to stir, and then transfer it to the zip top bag if I was going to use that. Okay, that is all of the information for how to brine chicken breasts the best way and most convenient way, shortest amount of time to get them ready for a delicious dinner or for a meal prep session like you might be doing today. I will put the link to the recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is July 13th of 2025. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.